Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 30 of This Valorant Life. In this episode, we're trying a new format. I've always struggled with playbooks and just trying to think through how to play defense and play offense. And so we're going to kind of create that on the fly with our host, Adam, who actually knows how to play Valorant. And so today we're going to go through Ascent playing Duelist. And I think what we're going to do with this series is we're going to actually rotate through all of the four roles. Maybe we don't do the same map for all of them. We're going to have to see how that goes. But on this one, we're going to go through Ascent on Duelist. And the plan is not necessarily to focus overly on this is exactly how to play Ascent on Jet or Raze, but it's more, I think we're going to focus on diving in on what are the principles we can take from how Adam is thinking about pathing, Adam is thinking on defense around what the enemy is doing. So with that, we're going to dive in. Adam, which agent did you want to use for this playbook?
I think Jet's probably the most straightforward one.
So we'll go with Jet then. And so if you're thinking through entering on B, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, you have a lot of options here, right? Like, so I'm just gonna go ahead and throw the smokes. These are like the three really entry paths that you look for as a Jet on Ascent, but there's a few distinct things that we can use here to translate to other maps and other bomb sites. Number one is your safe entry. So safe entry in this case is going to be defined by switch. Why is switch the safest? Because you can't really get shot by stairs. You're going to be in a smoke, so the market guy and the spawn guy hopefully can't kill you, and you're safe from logs and lane.
So we're thinking about this. We're thinking about guy there. You're thinking about a guy here. Where else would you be putting someone? I guess logs as well.
Yeah, and then maybe lane, I would say.
Like someone
Or
playing
like spawn smoke. Yeah.
the lane kind of like peeking behind the wall angle. Like he's just
Yes.
like it's a really tight angle. He's got almost no room, but right there.
Yeah, yeah, that one's pretty popular. So yeah, those are the ones. As you can
Okay.
see, switch is pretty safe, and there's almost always a safe entry equivalent on most bomb sites where you can
Okay.
kind of just get in and then isolate like one duel. So that's the most traditional one.
Okay. And so
With these,
the safe entry
yes,
on A that would be top gen.
um,
No.
probably next to gen, like
Okay.
maybe like on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first entry. That's the most universal type of entry is a safe entry. With option number two here, I'm just gonna put this in red. Maybe this comes out a little bit better. Let me redraw that arrow. So the one under market, this is actually my preferred entry. But the way I think about this red arrow is that it's a little bit more aggressive slash closer to a choke point. So the reason why this entry is good is because it gives you direct access to giraffe. So giraffe is important because it contests the market choke and the spawn choke fairly well, in the sense that if these chambers were to run out of, say, this omen smoke, I'm just going to throw the smoke real quick, you can quickly punish that, right?
Mm.
Another way to think about this entry is that we're not actually trying to clear the bomb site. We are trying to stop rotators. And the way I like to think about stopping rotators is by getting into what I like to call a power position. So a power position to me is a spot that on the bomb site that contests the choke point and just stopping the flood, right? So you can see the idea behind this entry is a little bit different. We're not actually entering the bomb site. We're just making space and then making sure our teammates don't die to any like flood run throughs. This is very common for me to choose to do if the enemy team is constantly playing a fast rotate playstyle, or if they have a lot of flash agents where they would like to just flash and run through, right? So that's my favorite type of entry for those. Now, if I'm playing against like I just need to go to site for whatever reason, there's not like a good roadmap for this, but just when I feel like I need to go to site, that's my entry. Then this is where that third one comes into play. You're ignoring all of this front site space and you're just beelining it into site to see if you can get that kill. Oftentimes you can try to do this if you know that the ledge player, I'm going to replace him with the Sova actually. he's like doing Odin spam or something like that.
Yeah,
You just want to like nosedive on top of his head.
I get it.
You can combo it with some type of util like a breach stun, or if you're sort of a counter recons, you can try to catch him off guard, maybe get the kill if you have jet knives or a shotgun. But
Okay.
this type of entry is specifically to counter the enemy's playstyle. Like if
Yeah.
you know this player plays here, you're doing this type of entry as a hard read to punish their spot.
You're trying to punish a player that is playing as if they're gonna have time, right? Because the whole idea is like he's
Yes.
spamming that wall, and he's maybe pulling out util so you can spam you through boathouse, right? And so you're trying to punish that by just jumping on his head, maybe with like even like a shorty or something.
Yes, exactly. It's a high tempo entry. It's something to do to catch them off guard. You don't do this consistently.
How does your playbook change based on how your team is playing? I kind of see this last one when you're kind of going in on site like that and you're trying to get into here and you're just dashing. I almost feel like you would need a team that is really ready to flood in behind you. Or is that
Yeah,
not the
so
case?
that's a good point. If the team coordination isn't there, then
Mm-hmm.
I think the last entry to go to site, like the high risk entries, is probably not a good option. So generally, I would say the worse your team coordination is and team timing is, or maybe you just don't have as much util because you're playing like a heavy duelist comp and you're playing Clove instead of Omen.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't have as much util. You want to go for safer and safer entries. So if
Okay.
we say like the yellow arrow is the most like the safest out of the three, and the green is the most aggressive, that scale should be used based on how strong your actual execute is. So if my team kind of sucks, I'm gonna go for the yellow arrow entry pretty much every single time, or I might opt for like rushing to the put like in this case the yellow and the red are very similar, so I'm gonna be interchanging between the two,
Mm-hmm.
but leaning a little bit more on the yellow arrow in this case.
And then as you think through like pathing to the site, you can go like obviously the green, you're just going to go over the roof, right? The updraft
Mm-hmm.
dash. But otherwise, if you're going the safe or the kind of below, I don't know what this area is called,
I
um,
just call it market,
the
like
market, like
stairs
the
or
below
whatever. Yeah.
market entry, like where are you going to enter the site? Like if you were to choose to support entering the backside of B and clearing it out, how do you think through whether to go lane or go through stairs?
Oh, that's a great question. So generally, as your entry duelist, you don't want to take the same routing as the teammate behind you, because you're the only agent that can kind of make the initial space. So actually, let me put it this way: if I can go, like, let me change the color. I'm gonna change it to yellow again. If I'm Jet and I can go stairs, my say Phoenix won't be able to go stairs at all, right? He's gonna be a lane player for sure. Um, so if I come back around, I'm gonna draw a backwards arrow here to the Phoenix. It's kind of clustered, but if I draw a backwards arrow and go to the Phoenix, now we're doubled up on lane. So you could trade your teammate, and I could see the logic on that. But your job as an entry duelist more so is to create a pinch, right? Like you want to create pressure on both sides so that the player on the site or multiple players on the site have two angles to worry about. Because if you come from one location, you're probably just going to get util dumped, or like they're going to, jiggle you out. It's a lot harder, right? So as an entry duelist, your job is typically to create a pinch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess I will throw in a caveat, like this isn't necessarily always true. Sometimes it does make sense for, say, like if my Jet is going stairs, and my Phoenix will also go stairs to support him, then your other support agents will come out to go lane, like your
Yeah, makes
Omen
sense. Yeah.
and then your Sova. Like that
But
might make a
if you're
little bit
thinking
more
in terms of
sense.
pathing, I think what's interesting then is the way you're talking about it. It's almost like if we know that there's like a microwave setup on
Oh yeah, with the
on
Killjoy
lane,
mollies.
like
Yeah.
that's so common, right? And then people get caught. Like if you have a microwave setup, then you almost know as a duelist that there's not a lot of point doing this aggressive entry because your teammates won't be able to flood behind you. You almost want to do one of these, take control of this space, pause, make them waste that microwave lineup, and then hit site. Like, is that kind of the thinking?
Yeah.
If you're kind of calling for your team as a duelist on how you want to enter the site, and if you're determining the pace, is that like a good way of thinking through kind of the chess match?
There's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah.
But the shorthand answer is yes. I think that is a good way to think about it. I think to add on top of that, you need to understand your job as an entry duelist, right? Like if you're going out and you just dash out and then instantly die, you've not done your job. Like a good entry duelist is one that can go out and stay alive and then eventually, hopefully, get a kill, right? But there's like this conception that floats around. It's like, oh, if I just dash in as a duelist, my job is complete. Mm-hmm. It's like a yes but no type of thing. It's like if you just happen to insta die, then it sucks, and that's your teammates sent you into die, and that's gonna happen. But a good entry duelist knows how to dash in and play their life and stall, right? Because a lot of times when your entry duelist goes out on any bomb site, there's going to be delay to separate the jet from the rest of the team in the choke point, right? Yeah. So commonly that's going to be molly in the choke smoke. So in this case, B main smoke, there's going to be a molly there. A lot of times like Sova darts or like fade haunts will come out like on top of the smoke, so it's very difficult to shoot. So your entry duelist is like typically after you dash out, you have to re-smoke and then like stay alive for like another like 2 or 3 seconds before your teammates can actually get through the smoke and get out of the choke point to assist you. So I think when you mentioned the microwave setup and kind of stalling, that we can apply that type of logic to every single bomb site. If there is util that separates the duelist from the team, your job as a duelist is just like freeze, stay alive, and then wait until they can kind of come through.
And you kind of have to think about that beforehand. Like, obviously, it's super easy when they forget to smoke the entrance, or they don't get the molly out on time. Then that's like the easy entry. But you kind of want to play like in thinking through the steps if it isn't an easy entry, and how are you going to make use of that?
Yeah, for sure. That's why it's always hard to play against, like go for a site exec against sentinels. Because you're almost always going to be separated from your team.
Okay, I feel like that is like a really helpful and supportive way of thinking through how to hit this site. Maybe let's go to A and see if there's any other maybe differences in how to think through all of this. So when you're hitting A, even before you think of pathing, how do you decide between going tree and going main?
Like whether or not we should split a site or hit the site just like full on. I think that comes in terms of like
more just like you as Jet. What is driving your decision making between going A and going A main and going tree?
I would say the actual chances that I can get there, because like A main is like neutral space, right? Like defenders and attackers can contest this pretty evenly. So the chances that I can actually get close to the entrance and dash out is higher than if I try to go into tree and exec, because like tree is not neutral space, right? So I don't want to be dead before the exec starts. And that's kind of why I prefer to go A main as a jet compared to tree.
I mean, I'm just looking at it too. It feels like from tree, if you're looking at your dash, I feel like there's less space to be gained.
That is true. Yeah.
Or you can go like I feel like the jet dash, there has more utility to the team in terms of gaining space than necessarily other pathing.
Yeah. That's a good point, because like once you smoke off tree, like your entry is going to be the same pretty much. I guess like that's another way to look at it, is like how much space can your movement ability actually gain you on the split, because you could just be going through a bunch of unnecessary loops to do a pretty similar thing. So if you're in tree and then you just dash gen, you could have done the same thing from A main. So yeah, I definitely see that.
When you're thinking through your pathing on this site, do you also have that like aggressive? I guess there's not quite as an aggressive one for A. What are your safe entries and what are your aggressive entries?
Yeah, so let's kind of use the same color scheme here. So my safe entry is almost always going to be gen, left side typically, because that will also let me kind of tuck and figure out how to fight the tree player that kind of runs out. So That one's a good safe one for me. Sometimes I will opt for right side as well, just to play this box.
Where are the most worrisome positions that you are kind of preparing for? So I heard tree, I think probably
Yep,
Gen, either this box or kind of like hell,
yep. And then
and then
heaven
heaven.
probably. Yep, those are definitely the big ones. If I were to throw in, say, like some secondary ones that I think about, I'll change the agent to clove. Close right is kind of scary. Close left happens occasionally. Like that's kind of where the tree player runs out anyways. And then this coffin position is also scary.
Okay.
So coffin as in the heaven box,
Yeah.
for anyone that hasn't heard that comm. Okay, so my 2 yellow arrows are the safe entries, and a good rule of thumb for safe entries is you are dashing into cover / next to cover, number 1. Number 2 is that it's an isolated fight on one angle. So if I dash to the right here, what is my angle? My angle is looking directly towards tree, right? Because the box will cover my right side.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm dashing towards Gen, I have 2 options. I can either tuck directly on top of the box, or like Gen, and then look towards tree, which is kind of hard. So like, maybe let me rewind. If I were to fight tree, I probably would have opted to like dash here and then like walk out towards this close corner to fight tree so that sight can't see me. Now, if I want to continue fighting Gen, ideally I like re-smoke my back, or hopefully like, you know, my teammates are out by then and I'm looking to fight Gen. But like you can see these entries utilize cover to isolate one duel, which is why they are consistent entries. Let me back up a little bit. So if you go with the power position type of entry, similar to the B site one where we went under market to giraffe, that's your top Gen entry up here. This is your power position because it contests the heaven spawn flood immediately, right? And obviously you get more angles here. I would also categorize this as an aggressive entry because I feel like you do need more util. So like in this bomb site in particular, your aggressive entry and your power position entry are going to be pretty much the same thing here, just because the bomb site is made this way, right? Now, if you did want to do like some type of like hyper aggressive entry, that actually starts on the round start and not on the exec, and that would be the updraft dash aim in immediately to contest the neutral space. And oftentimes you'll do this with combination of an omen blind or something like that, and you might have like jet knives, or you might have like a shotgun, and you're trying to kill the close player that is contesting A main.
Sure.
Say here, right? So I would say if you're looking for like a hyper aggressive entry, that would be the equivalent on this bomb site.
So it's almost, there's an really interesting decision point, I feel like, between you playing to hold the tree flood and you playing to control backside or maybe even clear out hell.
Yeah.
How do you make a decision on which way to play as a duelist? Because you got to make your decision before you exec.
I think it's based on their comp, but also what they're doing. Because like if, again with the flashes, like if I find that they just keep spam flashing out of the smoke, then I'm going to position myself next to tree to make sure I can punish that. Because the closer I am to the smoke, the easier it is to dodge the flash, right? So I need to be the player that's punishing this guy running out so my teammates can actually come out with me. Now, if they aren't, like they don't really have that and like they just keep running through the heaven smoke and they have like an op, like a jet op or something, or like the Reyna's running through the heaven smoke and they're just going for a kill and dashing out, then the top gen smoke's really, or the top gen entry is really good to kind of counter that flood. Now, if they aren't really flooding that much and it's more of like a 2-man bomb site, they're both on the site, not running through the smokes, then in that case, you might actually opt for, say, a safer entry just to buy yourself time to live so that your teammates can make it out of the choke point. You know, let that molly expire, let the omen blind kind of do its thing, and then you can kind of continue scaling. So your intent is so like, maybe a different way I can word it is like, if you can kill the bomb site player like ASAP, then go for it. You know, like as much space as you can clear in the shortest amount of time is a good thing, but that doesn't happen often, right? You'll have to insert some pauses and some like freeze time on your entries, and then it's up to you to understand where you want to insert those pauses based on what they're doing. So comp, flashes, tendencies, stuff like that.
So 2 things. And maybe the first one thing that I think I hear from you that's really important is like noticing how the other team is playing. I think so often we'll die in a round and then you just think go next or my teammates are trash, right? Like I think it's important to when you do die that you're noticing what worked and what didn't work. So are we dying because we're allowing this guy to free flash through tree and kill one or two of us and then dip back into the smoke? So then you need to change your play accordingly. But I think most people just keep trying the same thing and banging their head against it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Like the way that you kind of want to think about stuff like this is like rock, paper, scissors. Like did I play rock and then I get countered by paper? You know, like you need to be thinking about stuff like that. Now, of course, it's way more complex in rock, paper,
Yeah.
scissors, but that's like the thought process we need to go down to see if we are actually getting countered instead of just being like, you know, playing rock every single time and hoping that it works. Because that's, you know, that's just not how you're going to win this game. It might if you have like a double initiated comp and you util dump and then you can just brute force it. But oftentimes you don't get that level of team comp strength in ranked, but even that level of coordination.
So I got two more questions. First is you talked about how you can change your pathing based on how the other team is playing. Where would you start? Like if you don't have any information around how the other team is playing, you have no information around your team is playing, which type of entry are you choosing for that first round? Like, what's your default?
It's a good question. I would think the most obvious answer would be the yellow entry, the yellow line. But in my experience, I actually almost always opt for the red line. So just to redefine those, the yellow is the safe, the red is the power position entry, and then the green is the hyper aggressive one. I almost always opt for the red one because I find that it's a good in the middle. And if it ends up working out, then I can safely contest the rotate and the flood consistently. So that's almost always my starting point for first gun round. Now for a pistol round, obviously for this type of entry, you need an updraft. So I might just default to the yellow entry in this case. But like if it didn't need to do that, like for the example, the B site, I would go under market for sure.
Okay. Okay. And then last one is as a duelist, how are you coordinating or calling for util?
It's all timing. So you have to see what tools you have. If you have a flash, great. If you don't have a flash, you know, see what you can substitute it with. Like, do you have like recon info? And then obviously your smokes, right? So as an entry duelist, I will always make sure that I'm asking for my smokes or at least waiting for them. Like, hey, I'm ready to go. Can we smoke? That's like Q number one is smokes. Number two is like any follow-up util. So follow-up util will define as flashes / recon util or just anything. And if I have something like that, I'll call it and wait for it and then go. So that does dictate your routing a little bit. So in the case of A-site, if I have the omen blind to go gen, that makes a strong case for me to go gen, right? But if I say don't have the omen blind, but instead I have like a recon dart that like lands back sight, then I'm going to move the Astro just so you can see the dart. Then the exec might be a little bit more fluid. Like I might be able to go top gen and smoke myself off to try to go for that spam kill. Or I could just go for a more safe entry, right? So it's less important where you're entering and more so of how you're capitalizing on util if you have it.
I just want to point out though that the timing feels a little different, right? You want to
Sure.
follow up directly on the omen flash, like he flashes and you're right behind. Whereas
Right.
I feel like if you're entering onto let's say top gen and you've got a KO, I feel like he's throwing the flash after you dash so that you can exit the like ideally exit the smoke right after it's flashed.
Yeah, you bring up good points. Like, do you use the util to prep the entry or do you use it during the entry? Um, Oftentimes in ranked, it's almost always going to be the first one. Like
Yeah.
all the util, you just dump it at the start and then everyone just runs out and then you just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Um, it's very rare for you to time entry util that is happening after the dash unless you're playing with like a duo or like a 5-stack or something like that,
Sure.
where you can coordinate that.
Yeah.
So you do bring up good points though, because that is exactly how you should play the KO. Or you can actually just spam chuck flashes over the top right here, because it won't blind your teammates. This is actually the best Ascent KO flash for the A rush. But generally, you just util dump at the start, trying to make as much space as possible, and then it's free flowing, I would say.
Okay, maybe let's switch over to defense then. So I feel like as we talk through defense for a jet on this site specifically, I feel like there's just three scenarios we're thinking about. One, are they rushing A? Two, are they rushing B? And three, are they defaulting? And they're trying to understand where people are playing. Would you say those are kind of the three scenarios that you're planning for on this map?
I think yes, but I also think there's a different perspective. Is
Sure.
like, do I want to play aggressive or do I want to play passive? And I think like, or like,
Yes.
do I want to play more of a fast rotate potentially, like when I'm playing in mid, you know? So
Okay.
I'll just put mid here. Um, so I think maybe like there's those two categories that we just have to try to figure out how to mix and match. And I guess like I don't really have that solidified.
How would you be thinking through playing aggressive versus passive versus fast rotate? I think if you believe, and maybe this is a bad mindset, but if you believe that you're a better player, you do want to play fast rotate because you want to be able to affect both sides. Strategically, is there any other reason you would want to do that?
If you don't have good reads, right? So if you're feel like you're playing retake simulator a lot and you're just like picking the wrong site or like you're just getting faked out with info, playing like centralizing in the middle of the map and just playing fast rotate can be a good like answer because it's, you know, a nice middle ground. In terms of aggressive versus passive though, let's just actually get rid of these other jets and let's just look at the A main fight versus coffin. Now these are like two completely different playstyles, but you'll always see good jets do both, right? So this is kind of hard to maybe wrap your head around, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about it like this. I will play aggressive if I think I can get a kill and fall back. It's as simple as that. If I can get a kill and fall back, I'm going to play aggressive. This will also double up with the fact that I get to absorb more utility at the start of the round. What that means is if I'm playing aggressive, then they have to respect me by using Sova Dart, maybe even Omen Blind, maybe even Sova Drone to push me off of A main. Now, if they don't do that, then I'm going to get a kill and fall back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can absorb a lot of util here. Best case scenario is you get a kill.
When would be a situation where you don't think you could get a kill and fall back?
When they're util dumping me, and if I don't have supporting util. So generally, I only go for that A main fight if I have the one way. If I don't have that one way, I'm not going to go for that fight. And maybe if like my gun is just not for that fight, like it's not an appropriate fight for it, then I won't go for it.
Okay.
So if I don't have that supporting util, or like if I'm getting full util dump, like let's say I've gone for that A main fight 2 or 3 rounds already, and they've adapted by throwing Omen Blind. There's not much reason for me to go for this aggressive A main fight. I might as well dodge the util. Now I'm gonna go ahead and say that there is a derivative of this, where like a variation where you actually play close A main, know that they're gonna Omen Blind, dodge the Omen Blind here, and then reaggress after the Omen Blind's gone and catch them off guard. You could go for something like that. Just remember, when you're going for an aggressive jet playstyle, it's not to brute force, it's to punish them being lazy. Does that make sense? You're punishing bad gameplay. That's the only reason you can go for aggressive play. If you don't see that gap, you're not going to be aggressive because now you're just brute forcing it and you're just hoping that you're better than them. And that's not a consistent playstyle. Now it is if you're on your A game, like your A, B versus C game. If you're on your A game and you can just absorb all the util and fight like 1v3 and still get a kill, then you know you can get away with it, right? And if you have an op, you can generally get away with more stuff. So that's what I'm thinking about aggro. In terms of defense, like just like a fully committed passive position like this, this is a very good position to play if you don't think that you can win that early aggressive A main fight, but you still think that they're coming A, right? So here this is not an active playstyle that we normally talk about. This is, I hope they come A. If they come A, I'm good for 1. And then I can get a kill and get out. But ideally, you're actually shooting for 2. Because you're playing this spot, hopefully they don't clear, you kill the first guy holding the off angle, you peek out, you try to get another kill, and then you dash back. And then now you're starting the round or the retake, hopefully in a 5v3, and then you just wait for the smokes to fade and then go into the retake 5v3. That's ideal scenario. It really actually plays out like that. You might get one and get out, and then it's a 5v4. But that's what you're playing this for. Because there's only a few agents that can play these good spots, right? You have the Omen and the Jet and the Reyna and the Chamber, right? Or like a Yoru, I guess. Omen can actually play a little bit better because he can play Dice, and then you can actually TP Heaven from Dice. But the thing to think about as a duelist here, as a duelist that has getaway abilities, so let's just define that as Jett, Reyna, and Yoru, you want to play positions that no other agents can play.
Yeah.
Right? You need to be able to play spots that you can get a kill and get out, and where they wouldn't expect like a Killjoy to play, for example. So these are great positions to play. Coffin. Other spots you could play is, I guess, maybe like in front of the tree smoke. You get your kill, and then you can dash backwards. But you're looking, I guess, for cheeky kills, for lack of a better phrasing there. And you only, again, go for this type of play if you think that they're going to hit that bomb site, and you're just dodging all the util by default, and then you're going for a kill afterwards.
So ideally, like if you were to kind of just think through the ideal progression, ideally the progression would be they're not playing properly, and you're going to try to punish them playing aggressively. Once they start respecting that and start util diping A main, then you can play this more passive position, because you're trying to take advantage and punish the fact that they're using util when you're not there.
Right.
But maybe let me take us back one step, which is you get one kill and you get out. How are you choosing to path and play after? Are you deciding where you're going to go because of where your teammate is playing? Or are you generally just deciding based on the site, I'm going to play and die on site? Like, are you going like this? Or are you going back gen or back dice? Like, how are you choosing like your next step and how to play out when they flood, even if you get a kill?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say all of those are right answers in different circumstances. So the first thing that you need to consider are ultimates. And the reason why ultimates is it just lets them get the site easier. So if you feel like their execute is very, very strong, then there's no reason for us to stay on site, and it's just better to get the kill and then fall off site, right?
Yeah.
That we're just not going to be able to hold that site. We're just going to be there to die. So if they have Killjoy ult, Breach ult, stuff like that, just get your fight and get out. Now, if they don't have that util, then it's generally almost always to play. It's almost always better to play for the site hold. We've talked about the statistic before, I think, but if you look on VStats, as soon as the bomb gets planted, the attackers generally have roughly around a 70% chance to win the round. Now, that doesn't include all other factors. It doesn't include numbers advantage, things like that. But that is something that I try to strive for as a duelist player, is avoid playing retake. So if they're coming to my bomb site and I have, say, the health for it, I have the gun for it, and I have potentially teammates close enough to rotate in, and they don't have a strong bomb site execute, like they don't have ultimates, then I'm going to stay on site and try to potentially go for the site hold. Your gun choice matters a lot here, because obviously if you have an op, you don't want to play retake. But if you're in like a weird transition phase where you can't set up with an op, it's sometimes better just to give the space. But if you are set up with an op, you want to keep that space, right? Whereas like a rifle, you're a little bit more mobile. You can stay on, you can stay off. Like it's a little bit more fluid there. So being, I guess, comfortable-ish is also a factor to go into it. But let me take a step back. To simplify it a little bit further, if they have ultimates, probably get off site. If they don't have ultimates or a strong bomb site hit, you generally want to try to stay on site.
When you're thinking through where to play on site, what's guiding your decision?
So I like to play spots that give me options, right? So let's say like I decide to pick gen. I don't have many options, right? Like I'm stuck here. Now this is kind of not true because jets have smokes and dashes. If you still have them, then you can reposition between the two. But I don't like that I don't have options here. So if I had the choice, I would pick dice, because I feel a little bit better about peeking around left side, right side, but also you can actually take a step back and reposition into hell. And if you do have that smoke, you can also then cross between gen or right side hell, stuff like that, right? So I find that you just have a little bit more possibilities on dice, and you don't like you want to avoid playing one and dones. Like let's say you fall back to a site and you pick like the worst one and done here. Like let's say you play Shroud. Like next to Shroud, you get your first kill and you fall back here. You're just gonna like get flooded on and get traded out. That's not a good reposition. Same thing if you pick Woodbox here. Now, if you think you can get the timing to catch a player off guard, that goes into it. But to summarize, You want to pick a spot that gives you the most options, and on the A bomb site, I think that's dice.
How do you want to be coordinating this with your other site player? Like, let's say that guy's playing tree. How does that affect your decision making?
Yeah. So if he's playing tree and I can make it back onto site in time, then he's able to play off of me and run through the smoke whenever. You know, I might ask for you to like, hey, when they dash out, can you blind, or you know, whatever the case may be, depending on his agent.
Yeah.
It's really good for your flash player to be in tree or a recon, like you're supporting util, because then they can reactionary use util through the tree smoke. So that can be pretty good.
Okay.
Now, if my site player is on site with me, then I'm just gonna pair up with him. So if he's playing dice, I might go Gen. And I know I just said Gen's not good, but if you have a dice player, you don't really want to double up because you're both get like util dumped, right? So you kind of want to spread out your numbers a little bit. Or if he is already on site and I get the kill and fall back, I might be the tree player to try to run through the tree smoke based off of my omen's contact. But I'm not giving the site. Like, I'm not falling all the way back to play, like, you know, reposition heaven or anything. I'm like staying close to the tree smoke.
I want to zoom in on one of the details here. So let's say you fought aggressive. Maybe you didn't get a kill. You're falling back. You're going to play on site. You're back gen. Omen's here with you. These guys are flooding out. They've used all their util. You know, I feel like there's almost like two stages to the exact, right? There's one stage where all of the guys are here and maybe their duelist is on site. And then there's like the transition point when these guys are like running out. Like, if you were to stay, like, is there an ideal time for you to be peeking and trying to take timings to kill them? Like, is it right when everyone's flooding, or is it like a pause second after, or are you just kind of staying pretty passively in these positions and just trying to peek? Like how are you thinking about being sufficiently annoying and effective as you try to hold site?
Man, that's actually such a great question that I don't think a lot of people understand intuitively even how to play. So I think before I answer directly, let's think about util for a second. What type of util would you rather throw if they're in the choke point? Like, let's just go ahead and like let omen blinds, right? So you have
I mean, that's why omen always plays dice.
Yeah, so omen blind is good for the choke. Other util that's good for the choke are like mollies or nades, right?
Yeah.
So if you have this type of util, you want to be fighting in that first phase that you talked about. When the entry duelist goes out, you throw your choke util and then you're going to fight the entry duelist, right? That's your first timing. So as a jet, you're just looking to see if your teammate's doing that. Now there is a different type of util a different type of fight that you actually want to go for if your agent's different. I'm trying to get rid of this omen blind. It's just not going, but that's fine. It's flashes. Like, we've all heard of flash zones from Wahujin, right? Would you, like, if I were to ask you, I'm just going to throw Phoenix here instead of the omen. If I'm Phoenix at dice and I flash, would I rather want the enemy to be in the choke or out of the choke? It's almost always going to be out of the choke. You want them in the open, away from cover, in your flash zone. So you can see the thought process now deviates. We don't actually want to flash when they're in the choke. You want to give them a second or two to come out, and then you flash, and then you try to kill the KO, right? Which is also a reason why a lot of your rotators in this game are flash initiators, right? If you think of KO on this map, he's going to be rotating from spawn to heaven to throw high flashes. Or if you're playing Sky, she's rotating to throw flashes, right? So generally your rotators are your flashes for that reason, because if they've made it out of the choke, they're going to be away from cover and you want to catch them there. Okay, so now that we've talked on that point really quickly, because util serves a different purpose, it depends on your bomb site player, right? So if you're playing A with the omen and he has the dice flash, then you're going to fight on that first phase. And then after you get that initial fight, and like, let's say you just hold the smoke, then the site hold's probably successful. But let's say like they counter blind and come back out and you have to tuck again, you're not going to look for like a random fight. Ideally, you wait for a teammate's util or maybe your omen's contact, or maybe you hear like footsteps that gives you a good audio cue to go for a fight. But you're not just going to peek randomly, right? Like, it's too hard to do that. You're giving yourself a cue to look for. So maybe the common one is, oh, they close door, or they're like running up close to door. Pretend this is enemy killjoy, and like you can hear that as a jet when you're behind Gen. That's your timing, right? When you know that this player is here, you're not guessing. You hear his steps or he closes the door. That's really important. So hopefully that kind of answered that. Did that answer that?
No, that's super helpful. No, I think that makes a lot of sense because I think there's just a bunch of layers to this that you want to have kind of thought about at a high level and get used to thinking about so that in the moment you're reacting. Because I feel like so many times when you get exec on is that you die because you were uncomfortable and you were in a weird spot and they caught you in a weird spot. But if you're
Right.
already thinking through how you're going to play, then you get to just execute, and sometimes you'll die, but you get the chance to play the game rather than feeling like they're dictating it on you.
A lot of prediction goes into it, I think. Yeah, like prediction, but like preparedness, I guess.
And then maybe lastly, how are you thinking through this? Like, because we didn't talk about this, so maybe we'll just focus on this site for now. Because I think the other side will be similar. But let's say you're playing against like a Sova, and then you're playing against the KO. Okay, like he's gonna recon dart, right? And KO is gonna flash. How does that change how you play, or does it change how you play? Like, are you thinking
It
through
changes,
like
yeah.
he usually recon starts here, so can I play in a spot that doesn't scan, or am I coordinating with my teammate on site to say who's going to break the dart? Like, how are you thinking through that pre-round?
So the general idea is you should never let Silva Util get value. So if you know he's darting in a place, you insta break it. If you know he's droning, you insta break it. It's rare for someone to play a spot that is intentionally hidden from the dart instead of breaking it, because then by process of elimination they might know where you're playing if the dart isn't broken because it's cleared other
Got
positions,
it. Okay.
right? So now you can kind of mess with their head a little bit if you're playing jet, because if you smoke the dart, they don't know that the dart is smoked and it will still like, ping, and then it gives them like false sense of security. So if you're playing a jet, it actually might be better just to smoke the dart instead of breaking it. But of course now you're -1 smoke, so
Yeah.
that's a thing there. But to answer the question directly, you should try to break the dart, and you should try to coordinate that dart break. Either you're breaking or they're breaking it, so you're ready for the hit.
We've talked about staying on site. How are you thinking through how you want to play if you played offsite? Oh, and actually, I just want to add your comment around retakes. I was looking. Platoon does all these great videos, and
Mm-hmm.
one of them he was talking about like how the retake percentage is across VCT teams, and obviously they're playing against top competition, but like even the best, most coordinated teams are topping out at a retake percentage around 40 to 42%. I want to say. So that's at like a super organized level of competitive play. They're still not reaching 50% on retakes.
Right. Yeah, that's good to point out. Retakes, the defender's almost always on the back foot.
Yeah,
So,
because if you think about it in like other games, like in League of Legends, you would say who has lane priority, right? And
mm-hmm.
if you're dominating lane, you have priority. And so in that way, I think once you've planted the bomb as a attacker, you have priority.
100%.
So when you're playing offsite, and let's say you're waiting for your teammates, how do you think through like how to like less so specific to like A and Ascent, but just how are you thinking through how to play this? Is it dependent on your teammates and their util, or is it dependent on the map of whether you want to retake from tree or retake from heaven?
Oh man, yeah, that's a good question. Like, what choke point do you choose? Um, I think some of it is map/bomb site dependent for sure, but I think it's also gun choice. Like at least for this bomb site, you'd rather go heaven with an op so you can hold a main.
Yeah.
And if you had a rifle, maybe tree would be a little bit more comfortable. Um, so there's that piece of it. But I think even before that, like it's important to ask yourself, like, what are you doing before the retake starts? Like, are you just holding a smoke? Are you looking to gain more space? Are you looking to regroup to another teammate if you're kind of like separated? Are you looking to clear out mid for the lurker? Like those are all questions that you need to ask yourself so that you're just not doing nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what will give you the best preparation to go into the retake, and go from there. And if that means just holding the smoke because you have a killjoy ult, then just hold the smoke by all means. But if you think that this guy is lurking mid every single round, then you might want to, be a little bit more proactive and walk off, like clear cat in this case before you break the door, to see if you can catch that lurker and then come back and go into the retake. So there's a lot of factors there, but I guess the overarching question is, what can I do to prepare for the retake in the best way possible? And that's, very encompassing, a lot of factors that go into that for sure. But I think that's the first question that I ask myself. It's like, what should I be doing right now to prepare for the retake?
Which, clearing out cat is a huge one in case there's the super late lurk, or maybe not even the super late lurk, and then also gun choice. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, I feel like that was like a good primer to think through a playbook for how you want to play site. I feel like if you can think about this pre-round and be adopting your game plan through the rounds, and you're noticing what teams do, I think this is going to really change how out of control or in control the game feels. I feel like sometimes games feel out of control and there's nothing you can do, but I think it's because most of the time we're autopiloting and we're not thinking about how proactively we can actually change our game plan and our playing style to match our opponent or beat them.
Yeah, definitely agree. We got to be prepared when we go into these games. You look at the comp and you just, try to make some inferences or hypotheses and test them out.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Adam, for walking us through this. And I hope this was super helpful. If you like this series, if you like what we're doing, I think we want to go through Sentinel, Initiator, and Controller. If you like this, please let us know. We'd love to know whether this series is hitting and whether this is helpful. So thanks again for tuning in. As always, we love and appreciate the sport. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.